Donnell Vista Point in California's Sierra Nevada looks like a paradise, but for decades, people have come here and never returned. Cars left locked, wallets and keys untouched, entire lives abandoned in an instant.
Patrol deputies discovered her car at the Donnell Vista Point. There were items in the car that made it appear like somebody was just going on a trip.
Locals whisper about ancient giants, UFOs, and creatures that walk the forest at night. Is it all just a coincidence? Or is Donnell Vista hiding something we're not supposed to understand?
Cave in here, kinda. Can't tell how far it goes back.
Stay with me because today we're going to be exploring the place of one of California's strangest mysteries. Welcome to Donnell Vista, the vanishing point. So we're driving up Highway 108 right now, which is on the way to our destination. There's apparently a police chase along this freeway at one point, where police saw the highway patrol saw a triangular craft in the sky that they chased for a few miles before it ended up disappearing at the location that we're going to right now, which is also the same spot where 3 people have mysteriously vanished over the years. Nita Mayo was a 64-year-old licensed practical nurse that left her home in Hawthorne, Nevada on August 8, 2005 for a solo day trip. Her last confirmed sighting was at the Strawberry General Store, a small outpost near Pinecrest where she purchased some souvenirs. These souvenirs were later found in her car, suggesting she was on a return trip to Nevada when she stopped. 2 days after she was last seen on August 10th, Nita's silver 1997 Mercury Sable station wagon was discovered in the parking lot of Donnell Vista Point. So this is where Nita Mayo's silver 1997 Mercury Sable was found. And like I said earlier, it was locked. Inside were her purse, wallet, keys, souvenirs. Only her camera and her prescription sunglasses were missing, which indicated that she had possibly gotten out to take some photos of the scenery. 9 years later, in 2014, another woman, Patricia Tolhurst, white Toyota 4Runner, was also found abandoned in this very parking lot. As with Nita Mayo, her purse and other personal belongings were left inside the vehicle. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Patricia had sent a letter to friends indicating that she was heading to nearby Kennedy Meadows to, quote, put her feet in the water. Friends and family revealed that she was grappling with severe financial difficulties and was reportedly distraught. These details initially led investigators to ponder theories of a voluntary disappearance. She had even apparently sent audio tapes containing her life story to another friend, a gesture that further suggested a sense of finality. Details later emerged from her son. A motorcycle helmet belonging to a man described as somewhat obsessed with Patricia was discovered in the back of her car. Despite a nearly week-long search by rescue teams, no trace of Patricia has ever been found.
So the path is over here, and this is where most sane people would probably go down, so we'll go down that way. So most of the people that disappeared here most likely would have walked down this path we're on right now. There's a sharp 1,000-foot drop down in this area. There's also a path up there. We'll check all this out. So I'm gonna go out here and check this out. You guys just hang back.
As we looked around, it became pretty obvious why so many people could disappear in an area like this. Everywhere we looked, there was sheer drops of hundreds of feet. One wrong step and you could easily plummet to your death. What's odd is despite that fact, this area has been thoroughly searched for years, with no remains or signs of the missing persons ever turning up. It's kind of as if they simply vanished off the face of the earth.
So as you can kind of see, That is like 1,000-foot straight drop down. I mean, it'd be real easy to lose your footing right here and just kind of plummet to the bottom. So I'm definitely not ruling out just accidental falls as the case. Yeah, this is going to be the overlook.
Long before the modern disappearances, this land bore witness to intense conflict. It's the site of the last battle of 1858, a violent clash between Native Americans and white settlers in the very canyon we see below. This event undeniably contributes to the Vista's dark and mysterious past, with some theories suggesting such sites of historical trauma can hold a quote-unquote psychic residue. But the mysteries here extend far beyond recorded history. The indigenous Miwok people who inhabited this region passed down legends of a giant, hairy man who roamed these mountains and was known to carry off humans. Furthermore, the skies above Tuolumne County have cultivated a reputation for unidentified aerial phenomena, earning the moniker Triangle Alley. Reports range from 19th century tales of the Sonora Aero Club's gravity-defying airships to compelling modern sightings, like we discussed earlier, of triangular aircraft. Our next unsolved disappearance brings us to the case of Breck Phelps, a 68-year-old corrections officer who vanished on October 1st, 2016. Phelps, known for his love of fishing, was on a trip to the Stanislaus River, an area he was actually quite familiar with. His red 2007 Nissan Versa was later discovered parked about a quarter mile from Donnell Vista Point along Highway 108. It was near a trail he often used to access the river. As you can see here, the middle fork of the Stanislaus River connects to Donnell Point. So while he was not directly at the point itself, he was extremely close just up the river. When Breck failed to show up, what followed was a massive search and rescue operation involving the Tuolumne County Sheriff's Office, the National Guard, multiple helicopters, infrared thermal imaging, dog teams, and even dive teams scouring the Stanislaus River and the Donnell Reservoir below. His cell phone had been powered down, preventing any kind of tracking. Despite this multi-day, high-tech, and extensive search effort, not a single sign of Breck Phelps, his fishing gear, or any of his remains was ever found. His son, who participated in the search, expressed astonishment that such a comprehensive effort yielded absolutely nothing.
The wind's not too bad up there. Brought my metal detector along because I just want to kind of metal detect in the area here. I'm sure it's been done, but you never know, right? So we're going to look and see if we can find anything.
So while I was metal detecting in the area, I started to turn up a lot of old iron nails. They were literally everywhere. Because of the laws surrounding metal detecting, we decided to leave them there. We also found an old bullet casing, and while in some circumstances that might seem suspicious, I tend to find these almost every single time I metal detect. This area in particular is super remote, and people often knock back a few beers and shoot their guns off. It's pretty common out here. So, not finding much here, we decided to push down the hill towards the river in a less traversed area to see if we would have any more luck.
You could go down even deeper.
Yeah, you might even be able to get down to the water from here.
Possibly.
What a day for my foot to be killing me.
This area is definitely super rough and difficult to get through. I really can't imagine two women in their 60s deciding to willingly come down into an area like this. But as you'll see, we did turn up a few interesting finds.
Look at this interesting little cave or something over here. Not a cave, but like this would look like a pretty cozy home to me if I was an animal. And a snake.
There's a
So
little thing up there.
where?
Cave up there.
There's a cave.
It's like a boulder formation.
Oh yeah.
Should I go check it out?
Oh. There's a lot of actual like places something can hide in here. To be honest, look at that one right there. Interesting little cave in here, kinda. I can't tell how far it goes back. It's pretty dark in there, so as you can see, there's a lot of nooks and crannies and things that, you know, someone could potentially crawl into and hide or get stuck in. And, you know, we only explored for maybe an hour, half an hour at that, so I'm sure there's even more than what we were able to find. Interesting. Some old rope. Really old.
Are you sure they weren't hiking? When they went fishing? You want me to pick it up?
What's this? It's like a really old spool of thread. Why? That's so bizarre. This area has been searched for years now. It's been 20 years since the disappearance of Nita Mayo, and in that time, I'm sure people have combed every inch of this area. I also don't think anything we found could really be considered suspicious. Like I said, with so many search efforts over the years, I just don't see it. I can't imagine the ropes could have been associated with these cases. They were older ropes, meaning they were made out of some kind of hemp fiber, it seemed like, and it seemed like they'd been there quite a long time. Let me know in the comments what you think. They were suspiciously short lengths of rope, but there's uses for them out here, and it's probably one of the most common things people bring with them when they're going on a camping trip, hiking, etc. This area is super rough, and if someone was doing any kind of rappelling, it could be left over from that. Well, there certainly are a lot of unanswered questions in these cases. I mean, in the 25 years since Nita Mayo disappeared, there's been literally no new leads. But I did want to talk about some of the theories surrounding these cases, just because there's a lot of loose ends that haven't been ever tied up. So in the first case with Nita Mayo, I think one of the key things that stood out to me was the fact that the search dogs never picked up any trails leading away from her vehicle, which would seem to indicate she pulled into Donnell Vista, had enough time to lock her keys in the car and grab her camera, because remember that was missing, and then simply disappeared. Now, my first thought on that was that maybe she locked her keys in the car accidentally and someone drove up, they had a conversation maybe about going to get help, going, you know, with them to call somebody, and then some foul play happened. But it would seem that Nita May always locked her keys in the car, and the reason for that is she had one of those keypads on her door that would let her in by unlocking the car. So her friends and family indicated that that was something that she always did. Her camera being missing would really seem to point to her getting out of the car with every intention to go over to the lookout and take some photos. Now, she was afraid of heights, and one of her friends did say that she would never have gotten close. But I think the camera seems to point kind of in the opposite. So the first logical conclusion would be that she somehow lost her footing and fell off the side. The problem with that is how extensively the area has been searched, especially in the 25 years since her disappearance, because remember, she's not the only one to have gone missing there. Search teams have scoured that place for all the people that have disappeared and never found a trace of anybody. So we kind of have to rule out accidental falling off the cliff, which would leave one last conclusion, is that when she pulled into Donnell Vista, there was somebody already there, or someone that drove up within a few seconds or a minute of her getting there and abducted her. That is really the most logical conclusion that we can come to here, because her trail was never found going off towards the vista. So
It's hard to think that it would have been anything else. But there's been no new leads. There's no evidence pointing towards that. No one's ever come forward saying they saw someone in the area, so it's a mystery. It's like she vanished literally into thin air. The next case of Patricia seems like it would be easier to come to a solid conclusion in, due to the fact that she recorded tapes and gave them to her friend, which suggests that she was going to Donnell Vista to disappear. She was having money problems, financial problems. She was a business owner. I believe she owned a restaurant in Sonora, and I think that she was having hard times there. The problem with this theory as well is the fact that no remains were ever found. It's also odd because her stuff was also locked in the car. Now, I say odd, but in thinking about it, if you were to go to some Vista, it's not like you would grab everything you had in your car and take it with you. You would grab the most essential items. Her purse was left in there. I don't see someone really needing that. I mean, there is the possibility of it getting stolen, but we don't really know if it was tucked under a seat, left out in the open. Which actually leads me to the conclusion that if she felt confident enough to leave her stuff there, then maybe there wasn't someone nearby when she got there. So that is kind of interesting to think about. In the time that I spent there, while there were other people that came in, that was really short stops. They would come in, look over the vista, take in the scenery, take a couple photos, and then they would leave. I don't think anyone was there longer than 10 or 15 minutes. I was there for a couple hours because I was making this video. So it's another frustrating one, and while it seems to have a very logical answer, there's never been any remains found. No trace of her has ever been found. No new clues have ever been uncovered to this day. The last case with Breck is a little bit easier to explain, in my opinion. I found this post on Reddit from someone who claims to be his son that indicates that he was really reckless when he went out fishing. It says that people would often get scared coming back from fishing trips with him because of just how he navigated the terrain. He wasn't afraid to jump onto rocky areas that were technically unsafe. So given the fact that he was fishing right up the river, like we said, from Donnell Lake, I think the most logical conclusion here is that he was fishing, possibly did something a little bit reckless, and fell into the river and unfortunately drowned. And of course, that was the logical conclusion of the investigators as well, and they sent dive teams into the river. They also sent dive teams into the lake, because the logical conclusion would be that if he did fall into the river, his body would have floated downriver and into the lake. But again, no trace of him was ever found. He had a fishing pole with him. He likely had fishing gear with him. None of that stuff has ever been located. So it's kind of another instance of logical explanation with no evidence to support it. So those are the three well-known cases, but there's been a lot of strange disappearances in that area. In 2016 on Old Strawberry Road, which we actually drove by, coming from the Strawberry General Store to Donnel Vista Point, we actually saw the sign for that road. Remains were actually found there in 2016, and initially investigators were stoked. They were like, okay, we finally found somebody related to these cases. But it actually was a fourth person, and it was the remains of a woman. Let me look at this. It was the remains of Denise Gadd, a transient woman that had gone missing the year prior. Because only remains were found, it was really hard for investigators to say if foul play had been involved, so there's no active leads that I could find in that case pointing to anything substantial. But again, it's another instance of something tragic happening in the same area. So I wish I had more answers for you guys, but unfortunately that's it. There really hasn't been any new leads. And I almost wanted to skip over the paranormal aspect of this, because I figured there were going to be some logical answers to all this. Problem with that is when you actually delve into looking into the lore a little bit more, especially of the Miwok Indians, which, by the way, we passed through Miwok Village on the way, but they had the story of the large hairy man that would carry off their friends and family. So this is a very persistent legend in their culture, and they were in that same area. Now, obviously that sounds very similar to what we would call today Bigfoot, and I know that sounds crazy, but there's a lot of weird evidence, especially in the Sierras, pointing to the existence of some kind of creature that hasn't been officially discovered yet. Take a listen to these Sierra sounds right here. So these vocalizations were recorded by hunters, and these are supposedly vocalizations by Bigfoot. And these have been heard quite often in the forest, and no one has a great explanation for what they are. But the Sierra Nevada region is kind of a hotbed for this kind of activity. In fact, one of the lakes that I stayed at in my secret lake video actually has a report on the Bigfoot research website at that exact lake. It's a very isolated lake. You have to drive a few miles on roads that are difficult for normal cars to get through. So you have to have a special truck or a 4x4 to get there. It's very, very isolated. And a woman and her family went and stayed there, and they heard what she called something similar to the Sierra sounds. Very, very strange. In fact, when I was staying there, I actually felt, and my sons felt kind of creeped out. We felt like we were being watched. And I think that's important to not ignore those feelings. So we actually left the second time that we stayed there. Then I looked at this Bigfoot reporting website more, and guess which area has the most sightings in all of California? Yes, Tuolumne County, and specifically the area of Strawberry, which is just a few miles away from Donnell Vista Point. And in fact, Strawberry General Store was one of the last places that Nita Mayo was seen before she went on to Donnell Vista. So I'm going to put some of those reports up on the screen now, but you can also read them for yourself in the link below. And these reports go back to as early as the 1960s. Sheriffs were seeing something strange. They found some big old footprints they couldn't explain. So I know there's never been any kind of solid evidence pointing to Bigfoot being a real thing, but there's so much circumstantial and first-hand accounts of this happening that it's kind of weird, right? Now, I won't get too far into this lore just because I know probably some of you are rolling your eyes, but at the same time, if you haven't researched for yourself, you won't see how much compelling evidence there actually is pointing towards something paranormal being involved. So, thanks for watching this video. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Make sure, if you haven't already, to like and subscribe. If you have any theories or ideas as to what you think is going on in this area or what might have happened to any of these individuals, by all means, leave a comment because I'd love to get into a discussion on it. I know this isn't my normal video format, but this was too captivating of a subject for me to pass up making a more investigative style video. So if you like this video, I could always make more. Appreciate you.